Thank you all very much. I appreciate that. You know, none of us likes to admit we're getting on in years, but my good friend and someone who I think does a great job, Commissioner Andrew Dinneman, said to me, you were here 10 years ago, and of course Barbara mentioned that as well, and I don't have the faintest recollection of anything. I mean, not the faintest. And this is not, there you go. Well, if I was a drinker, I'd understand it. And this is such a distinctive building, to coming up to it, that it boggles my mind that I don't remember this at all. The building wasn't here. That's right. Well, I am somewhat cheered by the fact that, you know, everything in life is a balance. I'm somewhat disturbed that I don't remember that. But I'm somewhat cheered by the fact that I've been told that President Lincoln was in this. I'm also told that this meeting and my appearance outdrew President Lincoln by several people. So that's good, too. It's a pleasure to be here, and I really... to create a new Pennsylvania, we would be here a really long time, and I'm not going to do that. But I do want to talk, because this is a chamber group, about one element of that plan, and that's our economic stimulus program. Or at the conclusion of my remarks, I'm going to make a presentation to you, and it's a demonstration of the effectiveness, I think, in investing in Pennsylvania, whether it be the big cities of Pennsylvania, our primary economic engines, cities that are on the cusp that can be revitalized fairly easily with a little bit of investment and incentives, or parts of Pennsylvania that haven't seen any investment in 20, 25 years. I am a great believer that we can change our own economic destiny if we have the courage to invest in our future. And thanks to primarily Carol Rubley's work, of course, Senator Thompson. Senator Thompson, of course, as well, and your commissioners, they have stayed on top of me almost from the day I was sworn in. I think I got a day or two grace period before Carol called me, and Senator Thompson didn't say anything to me because he was out of Harrisburg for a few days, but as soon as he got back and I called him on something, he said, by the way, so we do have a check presentation, which I think will be great news for all of you, and it is, again, a good example of what I think we can do if we're ready to fight for our future. We are putting together, as a key component to our vision of creating a new Pennsylvania, an economic stimulus plan. True economic stimulus plan, because I believe it will put into our economy in Pennsylvania $6 to $7 billion in the next 30 to 42 months. And that money will serve to generate significant growth, significant investment, but it will also beget other growth. And, you know, it's interesting. We're all creatures of our own experiences, and people ask me, why are you so confident that this stimulus program will work? And I said, because it worked in Philadelphia. And if you think of Philadelphia in 1992, January of 1992, the conditions that beset that city were significantly more challenging than the conditions that beset Pennsylvania today. In January 1992, Philadelphia was losing 30,000 jobs a year, 2,700 a month. We had lost well over 250,000 jobs in the 20 years before I became mayor. No one was investing one dime of capital in Philadelphia. No insurance company, no bank, not GE Capital or any mortgage company. There was no capital coming into the city. And when a geographic area is devoid of capital, it is devoid of progress, it is devoid of development. And we will not create jobs. You will not even be able to stabilize what you have left of your economic base. And we put together $1.5 billion, state funds, federal funds, and city funds, and we invested it in our future. And we did it with the belief that we weren't ready to die. We did it with the belief that we could be a great city again, and we could be a vibrant city, and we could change our own destiny. Were we certain that it would work? Of course not. Were there going to be risks that had to be taken? Absolutely. Were there failures that were going to have to be accepted? Clearly. But we believed that the plan would work. And to say that it worked is an understatement. The $1.5 billion we invested into Philadelphia's future created close to $4.7 billion of growth. It changed the face of the city. It created new things that in and of itself created a new infrastructure, a new environment for Philadelphia. It made Philadelphia a vibrant city again, a city that people wanted to come and visit, a city that people wanted to come back to live in again. It created a city and an infrastructure that in 6 or 7 short years became one of the great destination cities of America. And the most vivid proof of that was in the summer of 2000, the Republican convention came to Philadelphia. One of the most democratic cities in America got the Republican convention because we had changed the face and the feel and the look of the city of Philadelphia. And the best thing was that the $1.5 billion of government investment didn't just trigger $4.7 billion. That's money that directly came from investment where our dollars went into a project and they were matched. We did 30% of a hotel, 20% of a shopping center, 25% of a performing arts center, 20% of the Constitution Center, whatever it was, percentage of the deal, but often our dollars were matched 3 to 1, 4 to 1, and they were very significant dollars. But the best the incentivized dollars were only a part of it. Because when growth began in Philadelphia, when incentivized growth began in Philadelphia, all the people who had written the city off, who were standing on the sidelines, all who controlled capital, many of the developers who said, oh, you wouldn't catch me dead doing a project in Philadelphia, many of the biggest stores who wouldn't even return my phone calls in 1992 as mayor when I call them, all of a sudden, our growth opened people's eyes. And slowly but surely, a couple of hotels started construction, 2 or 3 shopping centers, a couple of warehouses, a performing arts center started to break ground. And all of a sudden, people started to scratch their heads and say, hey, this place isn't dead. And that growth triggered an economic explosion. We did 18 new hotels during my time as mayor of Philadelphia. The first 14 were done with government percent of the deal. The last 4 were done with not one nickel of government incentive, not one nickel. We did incentivized office buildings. And then we started to get office buildings being built and renovated with incentives at all. And it went on like that. And we did a performing arts center. And restaurants opened up without even bothering to call us. And in my last couple of years as mayor, the same places who wouldn't return a phone call that I made in 1992 were calling me, asking me to find them sites and locations in Philadelphia. And the best news is the economic surge didn't stop when I left. It didn't stop when I left. I don't know how many read about Borders Bookstore in downtown Philadelphia. At the beginning of this year, Borders Bookstore lease was up, and they assumed that they would renew the lease and wouldn't have any problem. Well, the good news for Philadelphia was that another national chain wanted that location, and the landlord had an auction, and Borders lost. And the best news is that Borders was kicked out of their location and moved to a location right on the Avenue of the Arts. So we got both the new big name retailer and Borders in the city of Philadelphia. We tried like murder to get IKEA into the city of Philadelphia in 1992. I got no traction at all. IKEA almost broke down the doors to get into Philadelphia in 2002. And that story repeated time after time after time. The bottom line was, even in the midst of even in the of 9/11, Philadelphia's tax revenues continued to grow. Fiscal year, when the state of Pennsylvania saw its tax revenues drop by $1.2 billion from the previous year, when the state of New Jersey and the state of New York had bigger drops in their tax revenues, when New York City, Newark, Hartford, Connecticut, Baltimore, Maryland, when they all saw their revenues take a deep drop, Philadelphia's tax revenues continued to grow. No accident. It grew because we believed in ourselves, because we invested in growth, and we knew what to do. Now, let's fast forward to right now in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania has had little or no comparative growth for a long time. It's a state still in many ways is the old industrial from the 40s and 50s and 60s. You know, we used to be the economic engine of the United States of America when coal and steel and timber railroads were king. We used to have the most vibrant economy in the country. But we haven't changed much since. We haven't diversified our economy. Invested in ourselves very much at all. I was doing one of our economic development summits in the Poconos, the Pocono and Lehigh Valley region, and we were in Wilkes-Barre the day before. I stayed at a lovely little place called Stratmore, right outside East Stroudsburg. And that morning, I was having breakfast, and the Stratmore Inn is owned by 3 families, and husband and wife run the kitchen. And we were out there having breakfast, and the husband came out, and he looked to be in his early 70s, an Italian-American gentleman, and he looked at me as he came out of the kitchen, and he said, "You Rendell?" And when people say that in that tone of voice, usually I say, "Nah, just..." But for some reason that morning, I was a little brave. And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Good." He said, "I like the way you're talking." He said, "In 1918, and Lord knows why he picked 1918. He said, "In 1918, this state had the #1 economy in the country, and we haven't had a new idea since." And you know, that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not much. We are slow to change. We Pennsylvanians, and I grew up in, the difference is just dramatic. The level of new ideas in New York and Pennsylvania is the gulf is incredibly wide. Change is hard to come by, and anybody who's been in government, our commissioners, Representative Flick, we all know this. People don't like change. You've all heard NIMBY, you know, my backyard. I had a great woman who was the head of my parking authority in Philadelphia. She coined a term, banana, which is build absolutely nothing anywhere near anybody. Yeah. And that is the truth. I mean, in addition to our commissioners, in addition to Karen, Colin, and Andy, there are, I'm sure, township supervisors out here and township commissioners love it when the development project, and you know, you propose it and people hate it. They hate it. It opens and they love it. And they love it. because all of us, but obviously we all fear change and we all fear the unknown. And nobody knows exactly what's waiting down the path. Well, that's true to an extent. But consider these statistics. In the years between 1992 and 2002, Pennsylvania had the third slowest growth rate, economic growth rate, job creation of any state in the Union. Only 2 states finished below us. Statistic. Consider that we've lost 75,000 jobs since December. Our unemployment rate is the highest it's been in 9 years. The interest rate is the lowest it's been in eons. Nobody's moved to take advantage of that fact. And let me give you an example of what being third from the bottom in job creation means. In the boom time of the 90s, something that in my old days when I was DNC chairman I would refer to as the Clinton-Gore growth era. But now that I am a governor and truly bipartisan, I'll call it the boom time of the 90s, the greatest period of economic growth in the last half of the 20th century. In that period of time, we grew. Pennsylvania's economy grew as every state. We grew 10%. Our economy showed 10% growth. Sounds pretty good until you realize that the top 10 states in growth grew between 30 and 52%, and that the average growth for the states was 19.7%. And to put that in the most concrete, if we had grown national average, not the top 10, but the national average, 19.7%, today we'd have 500,000 new jobs, additional jobs in Pennsylvania. $34 billion of wealth, which would have been spent in our economy in the last 10 years, and cash money and local government would cumulatively have $1.6 billion of additional tax dollars every year without having to raise any tax. Make myself very difficult cuts. Our cuts were much more moderate and gentler than what a lot of states did, but we difficult cuts. If we had just experienced average growth, none of it would have been necessary. So we paid dearly for being a no-growth or a slow-growth state. So I have put before the legislature, and we've been working hard to get as many details as we can, although I gave, unfortunately in length, a Bill Clinton-like presentation because I wanted to give the legislators as much detail as I could. But we put together another economic stimulus program, $2 billion of government money. A fourth of it comes from the federal government, and we have another government to make sure that we can access that half we can. And the other $750 million will come from economic development bonds. Now you may and it will increase our debt service between $65 and $75 million a year. In the last we were experiencing one half the growth or less than the rest of the country. We raised our debt service from $305 million to $606 annual debt service. And we got nothing for it. We didn't stimulate our economy at all. This money will go towards pumping up our economy, rebuilding our infrastructure, doing things to remove blight and to turn property infrastructure for development. And number two, it will give us the capital dollars we need. Again, do it. I won't go over them all, but let me just touch on a few. Number one, I'm sure here in Phoenixville, I think when I was campaigning this bill, there are areas where there is blight, where there is abandonment. In Philadelphia, there are in factories, and they stand as a monument to our failure. Interestingly, those abandoned factories are almost invariably in good locations, because there in the first place if it wasn't a good location. A good location means near a rail spur. It means near a highway. It means on the waterfront. It means in the center. That land is absolutely unavailable for use because the building stands, it's got environmental problems, and even the municipal government of Philadelphia, which has a healthy budget, doesn't have the money to reclaim those properties. When we get hot, I had to turn down businesses who wanted to move into Philadelphia because we didn't have any area for them. No room to grow because of all of the blight that's in urban Philadelphia, Phoenixville. That land goes. And bring that blight back into inventory of sites that can be used. So we create about $1/3 billion revolving loan fund to be given out to political subdivisions or economic development authorities who want to acquire land, acquire title to land, who want to demolish buildings on land, who want to do environmental remediation of the land, who want to put infrastructure in, sewer lines, water lines, etc., so that we can bring areas back inventory. When Governor Pataki first became governor of New York invested tons of money into acquiring 20 sites, 1,500 acres or greater, and clearing them and putting the necessary infrastructure for growth in. Tom Murphy, the mayor of Pittsburgh, I don't know how many of you have been to Pittsburgh recently, but downtown, the central core area of Pittsburgh has changed as completely as day and night, because Tom Murphy went out and put $60 million of his own capital budget money, and Pittsburgh has a small capital budget, went out and got $40 million from the foundation community to match it. And with that $100 million, went out and acquired sites and demolished old steel mills. And put that land, which was right at the central core of the city, back into development. And on it is unique downtown housing. On it is some incredible commercial and vibrant commercial areas. On it is technology parks along the river that are bringing high-tech businesses to Pittsburgh, and the whole face and shape of Pittsburgh has changed. We can do that everywhere in Pennsylvania. And the reason it's a loan fund rather than a grant fund, and the way it would work is, let's say your economic development partnership borrowed $1.6 million to acquire a site, demolish a few buildings, and remediate it. We would take a lien on the land. If the lien was eventually sold to a private developer, the sale proceeds would go towards discharging the lien. But if you use the land as an economic development incentive to give the land to somebody who was coming in, we would take a lien on the property taxes until our loan was repaid. It would be at practically no interest. But the reason we want the loan is because that $300 million loan pool, if we have loans and those loans get repaid, and most of them will, can be used over and over again. And this can be a decade, a dozen years worth of clearing of sites. Each time we clear one plateau of sites, we go out and get another group of sites and clear those. And we keep getting new and reclaim blight into our inventory. We stop suburban sprawl, and we get places that are ready to go near rail, near population centers, near mass transit, near all the things that most businesses want and need. It's a very, very important part of what we're doing. We're doing a lot of other things in housing and community development to help infrastructure. For a town like Phoenixville, I don't know if you've taken advantage of the Main Street program. We're considerably increasing the Main Street funding. We're also creating a program that one of Bob and Carol's colleagues, Bob Freeman, has proposed called the Elm Street program, which says that if we're going to have viable downtowns, and Philadelphia is the best proof of this, if we're going to have viable downtowns, it's good to have people living near those viable main streets. We'll create bridge financing for housing to come back into central core areas. And that's true for Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, it's true for Phoenixville, it's true for Norristown, it's true for a lot of areas that seek to redevelop. As we were coming through tonight, I thought, wouldn't this be a great area for some townhouses for young people, older people? Wouldn't it be great to take an old factory building, as we've done in Philadelphia, and reclaim it and make loft apartments in it? You know, there's so many things we could do. And with that population, one of the reasons Philadelphia has all the great restaurants and retail establishments and entertainment establishments is not just our tourism and convention business, is because Philadelphia now has approaching 100,000 people that live river to river downtown with an average median income of $61,000. That's an awful lot of buying power. That's an awful lot of spending power. That's an awful lot of shopping. And that's what's triggered Philadelphia's resurgence as much as any single thing. So it's a crucial and important part of our program. The second area that we need to do is we need to produce capital for development. Because right now, there is no money available for development in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, or basically for any part of the state. To some extent, that's a Pennsylvania problem. To some extent, it's a national problem, a outgrowth of the poor economy. For example, in the very important venture capital field, and venture capital is so important to new startup businesses. And when we say new startup businesses and high tech, we're not just talking about life sciences and information technology. We're talking about advanced manufacturing. There's so many incredible things. DuPont has several plants throughout Pennsylvania. They do advanced manufacturing. They're manufacturing plants, but they're using the highest technology. Advanced metals. We have we almost have a corner on the powder metal business in the country out in St. Mary's in Little Elk County. Environmental technology being used for economic development. These are all new technologies that are developing, and usually the startup companies live or die on the availability of venture capital. We are the 20 biggest states in the country. We have the second least amount of venture capital available. Our venture capital dropped, private sector venture capital dropped by 63% from 2001. Nationally, the availability of venture capital dropped by 60%. We put together two funds, $250 million of government money each. These funds are going to be privately managed. The private managers are going to go out and raise matching dollar for dollar, $250 million. I spoke even before I became governor, as governor-elect, to all the major foundations in Pennsylvania, and I told them that as far as their efforts for Pennsylvania, and I cleaned this up a little bit, I told them it's the economy, stupid, that what we do as a state is going to be governed by economic growth. I mean, think about it. If we had $1.6 billion more just on the state level in taxes, we would be helping the arts even more than we are. We would be helping higher education. We would be helping social programs. So the way to do many of the things that the foundation communities think are so important, the way to do that is by growing your economy, by growth. You can't tax your way out of a recession. You can't spend your way out of a recession. You can't even cut your way out of a recession. We've done more in cutting government expenditures in 3 months than any administration's done in recent times, and we've cut about $250 million out of the cost of government. I believe in 2 years we'll get up to $600 or $700 million each year on an annualized basis being cut out of the spending of the government. by doing smart things like sourcing our purchasing, by doing all sorts of good management and productivity things, just like we did in Philadelphia. But that's still not enough. You've got to grow your way into prosperity. You've got to grow your way into having enough dollars to meet all of our needs. So these funds will each have $500 million each. One will be to real estate to also help regenerate existing buildings, build new factories, warehouses, help acquire new land, all of those things. And the second will be venture capital. And it'll be available for life science companies, it'll be available for IT companies, it'll be available for manufacturing companies, it'll be available for everyone. For everyone. And that $1 billion of capital will make Pennsylvania a hotbed of growth. Because there's so little venture capital available in the rest of the United States, companies, people with good ideas, startup ideas, are going to flock to Pennsylvania to get access to those venture capital funds. Existing Pennsylvania businesses that have been waiting for some help to get the technology they need to expand and grow are going to have a place to go. And that's going to happen at every level. And I believe it will trigger literally an explosion of growth for us. With that, we're going to take advantage of our great university communities and create, you've all heard of Keystone Opportunity Zones. We're going to create something called Keystone Innovation Zones. They'll be for startup companies 5 years of age or less, and the applicant will be a political subdivision, and they'll have to be a university, college, or hospital as one of the other applicants. And they will create, again, no tax zones. They'll have to be on or directly adjacent to a campus area. And it's a great opportunity to get the best young minds, Wharton MBAs, people from researchers from the University of Pennsylvania Medical School, Drexel engineers, Pitt and CMU life scientists, who all right now are struggling with science and trying to convert that science into enterprise. Instead of them leaving for the Silicon Valley or going to Chicago or going down to Atlanta or going to Florida or going up to Boston, we're going to tell them, stay here, right near where you went to school, set up a business, you won't pay any state taxes or any local taxes. Have first call on those venture funds. It's going to create a tremendous, we're going to be able to keep the best and the brightest Pennsylvanians right here, putting their energy and their ideas to work for us, creating jobs for us. And lastly, we intend to ask the legislature, and I've made this known, to raise the cap on capital redevelopment assistance by another $500 million. And I want to address the question of whatever the additional debt, can we afford to encumber ourselves with this additional debt? Well, some legislator told me Standard & Poor's came down and testified before a legislative committee that because of our very low use of debt, that we had tremendous ability to expand and to borrow money, and that investing at this time, borrowing money at these interest rates and investing in our economy was a good idea for Pennsylvania. And in fact, the facts are fairly clear. Pennsylvania has, in debt per capita, debt per individual, 1/5 of the debt of Connecticut, 1/5 of the debt of Massachusetts, 1/3 of New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, and less debt per capita than Mississippi, West Virginia, and Kansas. So we have plenty of room to grow and borrow. And is borrowing to create growth unusual? Well, when a company wants to open up a new product line, do they take it out of corporate reserves, or do they go borrow money for that new product line? They borrow money with the confidence that they're going to grow their business, be able to pay off the debt, and have significant profits on top of it. And in the end, this plan all boils down to whether we have the confidence in ourselves. Capital redevelopment assistance has been used in many wise ways. Some of the capital redevelopment assistance has gone to projects that don't have economic development benefit. I'm going to ask the legislature to raise the cap by $500 million. But I am going to promise the legislature that we will not spend $1 of that capital redevelopment assistance money unless the project has either direct economic benefit, meaning it creates jobs and significant capital investment, or it sets the tone. It helps the environment and the infrastructure for economic growth. No more maintenance funds for museums. And I'm a great believer in museums. If museums want to do new wings that will help attract tourists, we'll be there. But if it's maintenance, they ought to get the maintenance out of their basic endowment. Plain and simple as that. This money is going to go to create jobs and growth. The legislature very appropriately combined with Governor Schweiker in October to create a lifting of cap on capital redevelopment assistance of $250 million. Capital redevelopment assistance cannot go to a private company. It has to go to a nonprofit. But it can be used by local economic development agencies to create growth and create a better environment for a private company that's moving in. That's one of the ways it's used most effectively. It can be used to create new museums. It can be used to create new business parks. It can be used to create new sites. It can be used for so many different things. And Governor Schweiker was able to distribute about $150 million of that $250 million before he left, and I was left with $99 million to distribute. The governor asked me on his way out the door, he said there were 2 or 3 projects that he wanted to do, didn't have time to do. Would I honor those requests? And I did. But that left me with still a decent amount of money. And as a result, tonight I am here to give a capital redevelopment assistance grant to the Phoenixville Economic Development Partnership, is it, Barbara? Partnership? And I want you to know, in my short time as governor, dealing with a very small, relatively small sum of capital redevelopment assistance, I have learned, and I think I had some intuitive belief in this, that sometimes it's not the $25 million capital redevelopment assistance grants to this county or that county, but sometimes the $1 million grants, the $600,000 grants, the $1.4 million grants can be as meaningful to a smaller area in terms of its economic impact as a $15 million grant could be to the city of Pittsburgh. The grant that I'm going to give the Economic Development Partnership for tonight, the Economic Development Corporation tonight, is for the Foundry Building. And I think most of you know about the project better than I. And it's my understanding that the plans that the Economic Development Corporation has is to turn the Foundry into a visitor center, a restaurant, brewery, and events facility as well, to create 60 to 65 jobs. And more important than that, more important than the 60 to 65 jobs, if it can be a catalyst for other growth in downtown Phoenixville, then it can set off a chain of events that can make this a even better town and borough than it is, even more exciting for people to come into. And I don't mean not just necessarily tourists, but people from the surrounding area. And it can bring back this area and Phoenixville as a place to work, as a place to live, as a place to recreate in. And so I think that this $1 million, and by the way, you have formed a terrific private-public partnership in matching this money. Chester County, the county commissioners have been there, the Chester County Development Corporation, and tons of foundation and private businesses have contributed. All this money must be matched dollar for dollar, and they have contributed to making the $1 million match available. So it's with great joy. These are the most fun thing I do as governor. I want to ask Barbara, the senator, and Representative Rubley to come up and receive this check. And say, other than thank you for this wonderful reception, the only other thing I want to say is I don't practice law much anymore, but I do remember that is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a negotiable instrument. But I want to tell Barbara, if you cash it, you're not getting the real check. Yeah. And again, best of luck, and it is my hope that you'll invite me back a year or two from now, and you'll be able to show me the change that has come from the foundry and from the development there, and what a catalyst it's been for growth here. And let me say, again, not only did your legislative delegation, your commissioners, keep the pressure on me to do this, but the enthusiasm and the contributions of all of you in the local community. In the end, you believed in yourself, so it was pretty easy for us to believe in you, because you believed in yourself. If we can make that attitude contagious all across Pennsylvania, I believe the sky's the limit for our state.
Thank you. This is the mural. This is yours.
I don't know about you, but I believe that Pennsylvania's future is going to be very bright because of this governor. He brings intelligence and passion and energy to solving problems and creating an atmosphere for getting things done. We in Phoenixville, the name implies regeneration, and that's what we are doing. And this is the Phoenixville mural. It was an ugly, grungy corner in the center of the town, but now it's the place where people meet, where they celebrate the past and look forward to the future. We'd like to have you have this as a token of our very grateful appreciation.
Thank you very much.
Barbara told me to go ahead. Could everyone please take their seats? We would like to serve dinner. I think everyone's good and hungry by now. I need a gavel. Could everyone please have their seats so we can continue? Mayor Skoda, Mayor Skoda's all please, and the flag is toward the front.
Okay, if everyone could. The United States of America and to the republic for which one nation under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
Good job.
And now last year's winner of the Citizen of the Year is going to give the invocation for this evening.
Bring
Let us go online to our Heavenly Father. Bow your God, of all mankind. Oh, I'm so happy that I'm a child this evening. Leaders, Barbara, to take us through this difficult year, that we may be able to promote peace in Phoenixville and through the United States and our country. Oh God, you're so good. You tonight, dear Lord, to touch us as we eat thy food. May this food be blessed from above and nourish us, strengthen us, and let us be able to touch one another and help someone as we pass this way, so our living will not be in vain. Oh, kind Father, we are so glad we have a Father like you, and we consider it done in thy holy name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, please be seated. And dinner will be served.